or internal network assessment, and we're going to cover those quite a bit in this course. But when we're talking external network assessment, that means that I'm evaluating a network from the outside. I could be in China, I can be in the United States, I could be in Russia. It doesn't matter where I'm attacking from, right? I could be in any country at any time attacking this network. So I'm on the outside looking in. The internal is different. We assume at this point that we have breached the network. We have a Dropbox. We've got some sort of code execution on their network. We logged into their VPN. It doesn't matter. Somehow, some way, we're on that network. What can we do once we're inside the network? And what that means is we're going to be talking a lot about Active Directory pen testing, and that's really what it corresponds to. And this course is going to hit very, very heavy on Active Directory because of this. And so you have two different types of network pen tests, and the methodology is very similar. The attacks and tool sets are very different. So they can almost be split apart into their own subsections, but you will have external pen tests, internal pen tests on the network side. You may be asked to do web application penetration testing. So that is assessing a website, right? You have a website or an application that is given to you, and you want to see if you can break that website, if you can log in as an administrator or get somewhere that you shouldn't be able to get to, and you just want to evaluate the security posture of that website. So there are a lot of tools and methodologies out there for that, and we're going to cover the OWASP top 10 in this course when we talk about that, which is big when it comes to testing web applications. So from there, we also have what is called wireless penetration testing. That is the evaluation of a wireless network. So we'll go on site, we'll try to hack into the wireless, we'll look at the guest network and see if there's any segmentation or not. Should a guest be able to sign in and access the same network that somebody who is logged in as an employee should access? The answer is no, but it happens quite a bit. We'll also look for rogue devices and see, what might be out there that is interesting to us. We'll talk more about all these different assessments when we get into their respective sections. Now, there's also what is called physical or social or phishing. There are three different types, but they fall into social engineering. Now, physical assessment is where you go on site and you try to break into a building. You have a destination in mind. Maybe it's a server closet or, some critical location in the building that they don't want you to get into. This could involve picking locks, social engineering a lot of the time, cloning badges, and just making your way into this building through whatever methodology you can. Now, social engineering and phishing, those are, kind of hand in hand. You'll do a phishing campaign or a social engineering campaign, or even a vishing where you're calling on the phone and you're trying to get information. And you're just after, what kind of credentials can I get? Who clicks on my links? What kind of passwords do I get, etc. We also have what is called SOC assessment. So a SOC assessment is also known as purple teaming. And purple teaming is when you combine red and blue. So as a penetration tester or ethical hacker, you're often known as red, and a defender is often known as blue. So you combine those and that makes purple. And what that means is we'll sit down with a blue team as an offensive team. We'll sit down with a blue team and we'll say, hey, what attacks do you want us to try to run? Or we're going to run these attacks, and I want to know if you pick it up. So I might run a specific attack and see if the blue team detects it. I might go plug into their network and see if it prevents me from plugging into their network. Do they get an alert on that? If not, how can we help them baseline this attack to get this alert? So I think purple teaming assessments are some of the best assessments that are out there, because not only do they learn from you and what attacks are out there, but you learn from them on how to defend against these and how to bypass these too, because maybe your first attempt does get blocked and you're like, hey, maybe I should, run a different attack and see if you catch that. And it's a great way to have that cat and mouse game again. So once we do these types of assessments, we have to write a report. We have to report back on what we saw and tell the client about it. And I put a little sad face there because, not everybody likes writing reports, but it is absolutely part of the job. You have to be well written in this field to be successful. So, you write this report and you're going to have to present this report to a client. And that's what is the debrief. Now, a debrief is where you take the report and you give it to a client and you walk through it with the client and say, here's what's wrong, here's why it's wrong, and here's how we can fix that for you, or here's how you can fix that, right? And so you have to have this technical skill set as a penetration tester, and you have to have this well-written skill set. You have to be able to write well. You also have to be able to talk in front of people when it comes to doing debriefs and talk to people. That doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert by any means. You can be an introvert. I am very introverted, but you have to be able to put that personality on when you're on site. Same thing with the physicals, by the way. If you're on site for a physical, you do not have to be an extrovert to be successful. I know plenty of good physical pen testers that are actually introverts and do just fine as long as you're able to get into that mindset for that temporary time period. So anywhere from all these different assessments that you could end up doing at any given time, you have to be well-rounded there. You're going to be writing reports and you're going to be presenting reports to clients. Now let's talk about the technical skills that you are going to need. And our course here is going to cover a lot of these. So at a base level, you really do need to know Linux, preferably Kali Linux, or what another type was called Parrot. There is networking that you should know. You should be familiar with the OSI model, certain protocols like TCP, UDP, HTTP, etc. You should have good scripting skills, whether it be Python scripting or Bash scripting, etc. there. And you should have a solid hacking methodology. And this is all what we would want as a base for an interview. You should have also tool familiarity, right? Metasploit, Burp Suite, Nessus. If all of this sounds like a foreign language to you, that's fine. Come back and watch this video again once you've gone through the whole course, and it's going to all click for you. And you're going to say, hey, I know a lot of this. And on the preferred side, Active Directory is huge. If you know Active Directory, you're going to be ahead of the game. Most people, when I interview them, they have a good base, but they don't have that good preferred side. And we like the preferred column a lot, okay? So Active Directory, super important. Wireless attacks, important to know. The OWASP top 10, also important to know. That is related to web application penetration testing. And lastly, coding skills. So scripting and coding, a little bit different. Scripting is what you'll be using primarily. Coding, you don't have to be a coder to be successful in this field at all, by the way. If you only script for the rest of your life in this field, you'll still find plenty of success. However, you can code new tools, things, contribute to the community with it. We'll talk about that here in a second as well. But just know that the base is potentially can get you into a job. The preferred will definitely get you into a job if you have strong knowledge on that side, along with the base knowledge. Lastly, something that is not covered much is the soft skills that you need to be a pen tester. So yeah, it's great to be technical, and we already talked about the social people skills, right? Because you're going to be doing that debriefing, you might be doing social engineering, etc. And you're going to have that well-written ability to you as well. But let's talk about some of these other ones. You need a strong desire to learn. You should be the type of person or that personality type that always wants to learn. And we talked about it, right? Where you should be the guy or girl that wants to go home and study, and you find this fascinating, and that desire to learn is going to benefit you because of that cat and mouse game, because something that you knew yesterday might not be an exploit today. Patches are coming out all the time, and you have to stay ahead of the game because of this cat and mouse game. So that strong desire to learn, super important. If you do not stick up with your studies, you're going to get left behind. And most people have this desire to be in the field of ethical hacking because they think it's sexy, it sounds cool, and it is cool. But if you do not have that desire to learn, you do not have that perseverance, which we're going to talk about, you're going to get left behind in this field and you're not going to be successful. So let's move over to perseverance. You have to have this perseverance mindset, not with just that desire to learn, but also that ability to not give up, because the answer is not always there in front of you. And you're going to see this as we go through the course. It's not cut and dry. It's not, hey, I scan for this, I see an exploit, I go exploit it. You might have to do a lot of research. It might look like the machine that you're attacking, it has no exploits available to it. And you have to be able to put in that persistence to be able to persevere. You have to have that mindset where I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep trying at this until I have exhausted all my potential resources. That is what makes a good hacker. Okay, that mindset of I'm not going to quit really makes a good hacker. Now, on top of that, non-complacency. This kind of falls into that strong desire to learn. Now, I've had coworkers that are completely happy. When I was working help desk, when I was working in networking, plenty of coworkers who are happy with their jobs. They've been in the same position for 5 years, 10 years. You cannot be that person if you want to be a pen tester. You always want to learn more. You always want to move up. You want the most out of yourself, okay? Don't be complacent. If you're complacent, you're going to get left behind. I'm beating the dead horse here, but it really is true. Like, you're going to get left behind if you're not constantly studying and if you stay complacent. Lastly, you should have a blog or Twitter or GitHub or something that you contribute back to the community with. It could be a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream or however you want to do it, right? You should give back to the community. When I see that somebody's giving back to the community on their resume, even if it's a blog post or Twitter, whatever, it really helps. And things that you're going to get asked in an interview include where you get your news from, and how do do you have a blog? You're going to be asked that, and Twitter is a great place to get news, and a blog's a great place to give back, and Twitter's a great place to give back too. So make sure you're contributing to your community. It'll really help you in the long run. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It could be a blog that somebody's posted before or 20 people have posted before. As long as you're posting it and it helps you learn, and it helps your style might be something that helps somebody else learn as well, compared to the other blog posts where maybe people didn't like that writing style, or they didn't like that, commentary, or however it is. So you never know how your content is going to help somebody else. So I always encourage people to go out there and make their own content. So that's it. And I know this is a long video. This is going to be longer than most of the videos, but I wanted to dive in and really cover what you can expect as an ethical hacker and what you need really at a technical and a soft skill level to be successful. So from here, we're going to go ahead and get right into the course. Next up is effective note keeping. We're going to talk about the importance of note keeping, what tools you should use to be keeping notes for this course, and then we're going to dive right into the technical concepts. So I'll catch you over in the next video. So before we begin in this course and we really start to dive in, it's important to cover one of the topics that I'm going to harp on the most, which is effective note keeping. If you're going to be successful in your career and you're going to be successful in this course, you really need to take good notes. Now, in this first video, I'm going to show you what my notebook kind of looks like, not only for my personal notebook, but as a notebook for an assessment and how I might take notes for an assessment. And then I'll also show you some note keeping applications that I prefer or I've heard students prefer. In the second video, we're going to cover how to install one of the applications and another cool application used for taking screenshots. So let's take a look at my notebook first. So here is my notebook, and actually let's click over here. So this is my notebook, and you can see it's really long. It's got all kinds of stuff in here, and it's just something that I build upon. This one in particular is actually only geared towards Active Directory. So I have a few different notebooks. This one is Active Directory, and it's actually a few different courses that I've taken in the past that I've kind of put together. And then just for assessment work, etc., I just kind of have a little cheat sheet here. So I wanted to show you this one in particular because these were built off of courses, and you're going to be working through a course. So kind of just get an idea of how maybe to structure it. So here you could see I structured it, and I've got different modules here where, okay, module 1 might have had this email macro fundamentals. Module 2 here has all these different components to them, right? And we have our notes, then we have child notes, and even sub-children to those child notes. And I'll show you how to create that here in a second. But let's say, for example, enumeration, which is one of the most important things that you're going to cover in hacking. And we take a look at enumeration. You don't have to understand what any of this means here. But you could see if I want to look at a domain and I want to get the current domain that I'm on, here's the command I run. And here is a picture of what it looks like, and here's what comes back when you run that command. That's great. That's what I want to see. And I have a whole list of commands for all of these in here, right? So if I'm confused on a assessment and I want to go and find a command that I'm not sure of, I can go to my little cheat sheet here. Now, again, this is really long, so you have to create your notes the way it really helps you. For a course, I think it's good to write it all out step by step like this, and then go back and make a cheat sheet. I don't need these pictures anymore. I've been doing this for a while. So maybe I just say, hey, get current domain is get net domain. And then I say, hey, okay, get object of another domain. Here's an example of it. I don't need the pictures because it makes it really long. But as an example, and over time, you learn with the pictures as well, at least I do. So let's build from that. Here is an example of an actual assessment that I did for a client, and you can see how I did this. Now, I did an external, internal, and web application assessment for this client, and these were the findings. Now, I'm only going to show you what is masked or obfuscated already or doesn't reveal client information, but as you can see here, one example is on the internal, they had something called SMB signing disabled. You don't need to worry about it, but here in my picture, I've got a nice picture. The picture has highlighted, it says, hey, message signing disabled, that signifies SMB signings disabled, and it has the IP address. So we identified the machine, and we give proof of concept that this SMB signing is disabled here. Another example, MS17010. These are both internal exploits that you're going to encounter in this course. Here's one, I checked this machine, it says, hey, this target's not patched. Now this is one I didn't exploit, but it shows that it's actually vulnerable to this attack. So these are a couple screenshots that I'll put. Now, your notes could be different than mine. How I organize is I take a screenshot, I put it in here, and then I make sure that I have at least the IP address and the screenshot for reference because I'll remember it. But if you need to go in here and take detailed notes, that's absolutely fine as well. You always want good notes for your assessments because you never know if a client's going to come back in 6 months or even a year and say, hey, what was that one thing that you did here? And if you go back to your notes, you say, oh, I did this. And some people get down really into the weeds. They have dates, times, everything for step by step what they do on an assessment. And that's completely up to you and how well you take your notes. This is kind of how I lay it out. And then you see the green check marks next to it. I add those green check marks when I'm doing my report. So as I'm building my report out and I cover something in the report, I'll just go ahead and right click and I'll change the note icon to a check mark, meaning that I've written that part of the report for that finding. And we just kind of go through over time. So with that being said, I do want to show you some decent applications. The one that I'm using here and that you see is called KeepNote. Now I run on Windows as a base. So keepnote.org, that's how you get KeepNote. It is for Linux, it is for Mac OS X, but this is totally a preference thing. Me, I prefer it. I've been using it for a long time. Some people don't like it, okay? So I'm going to offer some alternatives as well. Cherry Tree comes built into Kali Linux, as you're going to see here in just a little bit. Worth looking at, worth trying, seeing if you like it. OneNote's another example if you use Microsoft. And if you're a Mac user, a lot of students have told me that Joplin is really good. Now, I've never used this, but I keep hearing great things about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these into the course resources, and you'll be able to look at them, download them, decide on your own. Now, you're not limited to these 4 note-keeping applications by any means. Feel free to use whatever you like to take notes. If you want pen and paper, that's great as well. So just make sure that you're taking good notes, and we're gonna harp on this throughout the entire course over and over and over again. So make sure you're taking good notes. So from here, what we're gonna do is we're going to install KeepNote in the next video, and we're gonna install an awesome tool called GreenShot. And I'm gonna show you what GreenShot does and why it's so cool, and I cannot live on any assessment without it. So let's catch you over in the next video when we work on installing those tools. All right, so in that example in the last video, we talked about using KeepNote. So if you go to Google and you type in KeepNote, all you gotta do is come here, and KeepNote works on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS X. So great tool. The only issue with this tool is it has not been updated in a long time. Some people find issue with that. If you're one of those people, I'm actually not, you can use other tools. OneNote is an option. Cherry Tree is also an option. You can also find other options out there for you. If you have a favorite note-taking tool already, that's absolutely fine as well. just make sure to take good notes, especially during this course, and make the most of it. Learn all the things that you can and incorporate that. So I will show you quickly how to install Keep Note here. And another thing to note too is while we do this is Cherry Tree is available on Kali Linux. We're going to install Kali Linux here very soon. So once we install Kali Linux and we get into the introductory Linux and we explore it, I'll show you a little bit more of Cherry Tree and what that looks like. And we'll talk pros and cons of Cherry Tree when we get there. So here we go. If you are on Windows, you can follow along, or you download your appropriate one here, depending if you're on Linux or if you need Mac as well. So I'm going to go ahead and install the exe, and I'm just going to actually run this. We're just going to say yes, and I'm going to say next, next, install, and that's it. It's that quick. And then we just launch Keep Note, and here you go. We've got Keep Note. So the other tool, the really cool tool that I love, this one is called Greenshot. Now this is a screenshot capturing tool. So let's go to downloads here on Greenshot. If you are running on something other than Windows, or Windows or Mac, so basically Linux, you're going to need a different tool. The recommended tool that I've heard out there is called FlameShot, F-L-A-M-E. Though I have no experience with it, I've heard it is identical to Greenshot. So here I'm going to download the latest stable. I'm going to select run. Yes. Okay. Accept the agreement, give away our firstborn. Next, next, next. Place it however you want. I'm just going to next through everything, and I'm going to start Greenshot with Windows Start. That is my preference. I love this tool again. So it's finished. All right, let's take a look at it. So it should be running. Let's start Greenshot now. Okay, now you see it running down here on the bottom. Okay, let's go. Let's open up a web page. Let's say we want to take a screenshot of something. Now you just hit your print screen button, and this nice cursor gets brought up here. And let's say we want to just take this downloads part right here. We're just going to capture this. And now we have choices. We can just save the image that we just grabbed. Or my favorite is that we can actually just open in an image editor, right? So let's open this in their image editor. Look at this. Okay, so here's the picture we just grabbed, right? On top of this, really great tools. Let me show you two that I use always. So I come into effects, I put a border on it. Let's say that you have like a Kali Linux, and Kali Linux, if you've never used it, has a black terminal. It's really nasty. So let's imagine here that it's black. It's nasty when it comes to reporting. So let's imagine that we're in this situation and we're writing a report and we've got this black background similar to this. Well, you can see what I just did. I just inverted it. And I do this for all of my reports. I invert the Kali background. So that way it's white, and that way it looks nice on a report. And when we get into the reporting, you'll kind of see what that looks like. But I like a nice clean background. It saves on ink as well if they were to print it. And it's just nice and neat when you give it to a client. So I always invert my images if I need to. You've got the black border here. Another thing is, let's say you want to point something out. You saw in my Keep Note notebook that I had a highlight. You can just click that button up here and just highlight something like right here. Great. Another tool that's in here is this obfuscate. So let's say that there's like a password or something really sensitive in here that you don't want the client to see, or you don't want to reveal on a final report. You can do that, and then you can just like up the pixel size on this and make it really blurry, you know? So it's a really, really great tool. And then when you're done, you can copy it to your clipboard. You can save the file. I just usually like copy this, and if I want to go paste it, like, you know, make a new notebook or whatever, I'll just paste it in my Keep Note and just kind of go from there. So again, fantastic tool, awesome to use. If I had two recommendations for your note keeping, it's Keep Note and Greenshot. If I had to make one recommendation out of the two, it's absolutely Greenshot. You can be flexible on your note keeping tool. So again, hopefully this helps you. Again, please do take good notes through this course. You're going to find yourself wanting to know, hey, what was that command I ran again? And because we're going to go through so much stuff by the time this is all said and done that you're going to want to remember it. So please take good notes. So from here, let's go ahead and move on into our networking refresher, and we'll catch you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome to this section on networking. So this section is titled Networking Refresher, meaning that some of you might have a networking background. And if you're looking at this list that's on the screen, and you go down the list and you say, yep, I know all those, you can feel free to skip this section. If you've taken some of these in the past and you just might want a little bit of a refresher on them, then this section is for you. We're going to cover these topics not totally in depth, but we're going to use it as a way to brush up. And then we'll hit on networking again when we get into introductory Linux. So if you are unfamiliar with things like TCP, UDP, and the three-way handshake, or if your subnetting's a little shaky or you don't know what the OSI model is, chances are you should probably stick around and just click through this series, watch it, and build that foundation. Remember, we talked about one of the core foundations of pen testing being a strong networking background. This is a good way to build it up, remember what you might have forgotten, and go from there. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the first video, which is going to be IP addresses. What's up, everybody? So I'm going to preface this video really quick with that it is raining pretty hard here. So if the soothing sounds of the rain put you to sleep during this video and you can hear it, I'm very, very sorry. But the show must go on. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about IP addresses. Now, if you've ever used a computer before and you're anywhat familiar with IT, you probably know what an IP address is. But I want to take this a little bit deeper in theory on why we use IP addresses, what types of IP addresses are out there, and talk more about protocols and how IP addresses are actually designed and made up. So I'm here in a Kali terminal, and I'm just going to type in a simple command, and that command is ifconfig. Now, if you've used Linux before, this might be familiar to you. If you used Windows, it's similar to ipconfig. All I'm trying to do is bring up my IP address. So what we can see here is that we have an IP address, which is our inet. This is my IP address here. I also have another IP address, this inet6. This is what's called an IPv6 address. So we've got this inet, which is considered an IPv4, and this inet6, which is considered an IPv6. Now you can notice right away that there's two different types of notations for these. This inet here is in a decimal notation, and the IPv6 is in a hexadecimal notation. We'll get to the importance of that in just a second. So when it comes to IP addresses, this looks probably pretty familiar to us. This is an IP address. This is how we communicate. We communicate over layer 3, and you're going to hear me talking about layers repeatedly throughout the course, or at least throughout this part of the course, so that we can get familiar with how we're actually doing this. So I want you to be familiar with troubleshooting these layers, and these layers all refer to something called the OSI model. So when we talk about layers, we think about the OSI model, and I'll introduce the OSI model here in a few videos, and it should all click once I introduce the OSI model. So if I brought in the OSI model up front, it might be boring, might not make sense. So I'm going to introduce the OSI model near the end, and you're going to say, hey, yeah, that all makes sense. So what we've got here is we've got this IPv4 address, and this is the most commonly used format that we use today, right? We use IPv4 for mostly everything. And again, this is in that decimal notation. So when we see this decimal notation, it's just realistically a bunch of ones and zeros that are put together so that we have this human readable format. Realistically, all we're seeing here with 192, this first section here, this first octet, is actually just a bunch of ones and zeros. It's 8 bits. So we've got a range of 8 ones and zeros here. We've got another 8 here, and 8 here. So when it's all said and done, this inet, or this IPv4, is made up of 32 bits, 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 here, and which equals 4 bytes. So another way to think about that is to think about it as, say, something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, period. Okay, that is one section there. So we've got 8 ones that can make up this, and then we'd have another 8, etc. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. But I do want to give you guys another example. So if we go into our applications and we go to a text editor really quick. So the way this looks is something like this. We start with a number like 128. I'm going to try to space this out as best as possible. And all I like to do is think of 128 as